Hello, everybody. It is me, Peyton, as Joe Matrix, and we are here with another episode of the Cookin' Matrix podcast. Like always, I'm here with my good friend Sam.
How you doing, everybody? Great to be back.
And today we are doing the 2003 movie of Pirates of the Caribbean. This has not relation to the Johnny Depp trial, but it was inspired by it.
Yes.
We won't discuss the stuff about the trial. We're here to talk about purely the movie.
Absolutely. Let's just dive. First of all, I just want to say it's nice to be doing a podcast that's not Sonic the Hedgehog related after a year.
Yeah, because back and forth going between Sonic is kind of old. A little bit. Just a wee tad.
Yeah. But let's get into the movie. Peyton, I want to start off by talking about some production history of the movie.
Alright.
Okay, so Pirates of the Caribbean was directed by a guy who I believe is named Gore Verbinski, I think is his name, or something along those lines. And let me just start off by saying that when this movie came out, no one had faith in it. Hans Zimmer, who composed the main theme of the movie, when he was told that it's going to be a pirate movie, he said, "Pirates? You for real? Who wants to do that?" Even a Disney CEO at the time, Michael Eisner, was afraid to do the movie because it was based on the Disney ride. And I think they did the Country Bears movie before this, which was based on a Disney attraction. And that didn't do well. And this movie was shaping up to be expensive at the time, about a $120 million movie. So he was wanting to get it canceled during pre-production. So right off the bat, the fact the movie even got made and is good to begin with is a miracle.
I think some people from Lord of the Rings worked on it as well as someone who worked with the director. What was his name? Who's the director that does all the blow-up effects? Transformers. Michael Bay. Why did I forget Michael Bay?
Wait, Michael Bay was involved with this movie?
One of his assistants, I think, were involved in this movie, if I remember right, on my research.
Yep, Gore Verbinski. That is the name of the director of this of the first three movies. Interesting name, but hey, it's a unique one, that's for sure.
It turned out well.
Yeah, it's shocking because, you know, Disney recently made The Jungle Cruise with Dwayne Johnson, which is also based on the Disney ride of the same name. And let me just say, it's not that good. It's not that good.
Proof that a movie based off a Disney ride may or may not do well.
Yeah. So the fact Pirates not only did well, but was able to spawn a very successful franchise is kind of incredible when you think about it.
Yeah, no one expected it, but after it was made, everyone was really glad that it was.
Yes. Until the sequels came out, but that's a discussion for very much later on.
Yeah, the sequels were good to some extent.
Some extent, yeah. But let's just start talking about let's just move on from, I guess, the reception of the movie and talk about the movie itself. The story of the movie is actually kind of simple if you think about it, especially when you compare it to the later sequels.
Yeah, the later sequels, they tend to get a bit messy. Is that a good way to put it?
I think that's a perfect way to put it. The sequel introduces, like, love triangles, like otherworldly elements, even though it was in the first, those type of elements were in the first movie, but they're even more in the other movies, to the point where Davy Jones is a tentacled face man.
And you don't really understand it fully until the third movie.
Correct. But this first movie is very simple. In the basic of basic terms, the whole movie is about Jack Sparrow. he is trying to essentially get his ship back, the Black Pearl, which is why the movie is called The Curse of the Black Pearl. A guy named Will goes with him to save his love interest Elizabeth, who's been kidnapped by the pirates. And the pirates are interesting because they have this mystical curse on them, because they took all this Aztec gold that was cursed, and now they are immortal, and they can't feel anything, they can't experience pretty much anything, and it's just a kind of an sad existence for them.
It's kind of a double-edged sword because they're also kind of immortal.
Yeah, like I said. And when we say immortal, it's not only can they just live forever, but they're invincible. They're invincible.
And they're
the only way I think...
Yeah, go ahead. My bad.
I was going to say, I think the only way you can kill them is if you just completely destroy their bodies. Like later on in the movie when they get that one dude gets a grenade stuck in his stomach.
And they didn't really have a whole lot of grenades back in the day, I'm fairly certain.
Yeah, well, I guess grenade is not the technical term, just a bomb, I guess. Remember that part in the movie they put a bomb in his skeleton stomach? And then turn.
Even then, I think he would just form himself back together in some way or form.
Yeah. But am I missing anything, or do you think that's a pretty good summarization of the plot? It's very simple for this movie.
The plot is pretty simple. I have heard different things on the reviews I've watched of this film, because they say that Jack, he's the main protagonist, but the story is mainly based off of Will and Elizabeth, and they are the main protagonist, is what some reviews say. And that Jack's sort of just along for the ride.
I can sort of see where that's coming from. Will and Elizabeth kind of develop as the movie goes on, but Jack is kind of the same person at the end of the movie as he was in the beginning of the movie, if you think about it.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of character development even throughout this movies that he's in, and he's in 5. Well, except maybe the 5th one, but we don't talk about the 5th one.
No. Some other general things besides the plot are how dark this movie is. Even nowadays, this seems like a very un-Disney type of movie, if you think about it.
That's what made it so good. It's something that you wouldn't think Disney would make. Because it's about Jack Sparrow, he's lost his ship, he got abandoned to die by his own crew. And he's got to go back, he's got to get his boat. And you're fighting pirates who can't feel anything. And they just essentially want to get their souls back. So it's all around not too bright of a movie.
Yeah, and not to mention, there are certain parts of this movie that just kind of show the reality of pirates were terrible people. Don't let this franchise deceive you. They were terrible people, and if you met one in real life, they would most likely kill you or worse.
Even if you make allies with one, they might stab you in the back. Jack is not a trustable character, even though he's a likable one. By any means. He was going to sell Will to Barbossa at the start.
Yeah, and we'll discuss those characters more in depth in a minute, but you're right. And specifically, I want to talk about that beginning raid scene in Port Royal, where the Black Pearl comes to Port Royal, and it just raids. It's like an incredibly dark and almost violent scene in a way.
And Jack, he goes into Port Royal, and he just looks, and pirates have been hanged, so he knows he's walking to a place where he's probably not wanted.
And yet he walks in anyway, like a total boss.
Yeah, so it's a real death grip right from the start.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think of other general plot points. Oh yeah, the action scenes. There are actually quite a few action scenes in this movie, and they're all really good.
Oddly enough, they only seem to use 3 ships for the ship battles. making this movie relatively simplistic.
Are you saying there are like only 3 ships used throughout the entire film?
I think there were only 3 model ships that were used throughout the entire film, and there's only 3 ships used in the movie, which
I
is
think you're right. 'Cause
very few.
I was about to say there's the Black Pearl, there's the ship Will and Jack steal, and then there's the ship that the British are on at the very end.
I,
That is part of a battle scene.
I think one is called the Commodore, but I don't remember the ship names.
I think the one Will and Jack take is called the Interceptor or Interceptor. I think.
Put a lot of money thinking that name.
What?
They put a lot of money thinking of that name because they say that's the fast ship.
Oh yeah.
Just like, oh,
And
yeah,
then it turns out it's not the fast. It's
yeah.
not that fast.
we'll call it the Interceptor, but it's
Yeah.
not as fast as the Black Pearl. Nothing can beat that.
I think the reason there are probably only 3 ships in this movie is probably because of the budget.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. And after it got really successful, they say we'll add completely CGI characters because CGI characters are in this movie a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
they aren't CGI characters for the entire time.
Yeah. Unlike Davy Jones, who is nothing but a complete CGI character.
Yeah, a guy in a suit, one of the ball suits.
Yeah. And again, I want to talk about the action. What do you think of the action scenes in this movie, Peyton?
I think they're really good because even as they fight, you can see character development. In, say, Will, Elizabeth, Jack, especially in the last fight scene. And the ship battles, they have importance. They fight people with forks, which turn out to not be a good idea. And silverware. But we'll talk about that because that's a plot point. They were trying to get away and they were trying to lose weight. I think this does really good with its fight scenes. They keep attention, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah. And there's kind of a visceralness to them. You know what I mean? Like, again, we may do full reviews of the sequels another day, but we're not planning on it at the time. This is kind of a one and done thing. But I feel like in this movie, at least compared to the other ones, when characters fight, there's a real chance they could die. I never really feel like that in the sequels, except for certain scenes. But in this one, you know, people are dying left and right. Like, people are getting stabbed, shot, murdered all over the movie. And it kind of adds like a visceralness, like, will this character survive or not?
It felt really rough whenever they were invading Port Royal because they were just going down the street, just stabbing people out of nowhere.
And Will like threw an axe at a guy at the back of his head, and he came back later on.
Ready to throw a bomb at him, and it happened to not go off, and that's the only reason Will is alive.
Yeah, plot armor, baby.
You almost killed the only person who can relieve your curse.
You idiot. Although they probably didn't think... Okay, we should probably also mention Will is like the key figure in this whole movie. Like Peyton said, Jack is the main character, but Will is the whole reason the plot can kind of progress. Because what happens is that when the pirates are taking the gold back to where it belongs, they need to give like a blood sacrifice of each person that took the gold. And one of the people that took it was Will's father, but he's dead. And so Will has to give up some of his blood in order to break the curse.
It's pretty rough because Will almost gets his head chopped off. Even though the pirates were just wanting to cut the hand of someone, which in a way you think about it, why did Elizabeth lie like that?
Yeah, that's always been a weird part of this movie I just remembered. It's like, why did you say specifically you were like a Turner? It made no sense. You didn't know at the time that Will was an important character to these pirates.
Just, I wanted to protect you. Well, you didn't protect him. He would have got his hand cut. He might have lived if he got captured by these immortal pirates. But now... it's not looking too
Yeah.
good.
I'm trying to think, is there any other details that really need discussed?
Spoiler warning, Barbossa dies. For the first time.
But then, yeah, for the first... He dies twice in this franchise, doesn't he?
Yeah, once in the first one, second time in the fifth one.
Jeez Louise.
They're gonna have to revive Barbossa to keep the franchise alive.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's about time we move on to characters.
I believe so too. And who better to start talking about than Jack Sparrow? The man, the myth, the legend, the drunken fool who's actually not a fool.
Peyton, I'm gonna make a bold statement here.
Yes.
I'm not being hyperbolic about this at all.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Sparrow is one of the best film characters ever put to screen.
I agree with this statement.
I mean, he's funny, he's scary at times, he's witty, he's able to put up a fight. He's just an all-around great character, and he would be nothing without Johnny Depp's incredible performance as him.
Johnny Depp has a lot of range with his acting that he's able to do. And this allows him to really get into the character that he needs to play.
Yeah, and he is so good at making Jack look like a drunk idiot.
Who is secretly a genius, somehow.
Yes. I was about to say, in the third movie, it's kind of revealed that Jack is one of the 9 pirate lords. And I'm like, how did this idiot become a lord of pirates?
And then you think about all the stuff he did, and you're like, yeah, I could see that.
I mean, in the second and third movie, he faces Davy Jones and lives. And in the fourth movie, he finds the Fountain of Youth.
And sadly is unable to use it.
Well, he does, but not for himself.
Yeah, we can discuss that another day. Can I just say that the fourth one might be my favorite?
Fair enough. This is a very unpopular opinion, but both me and Peyton love the fourth movie. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but I really do like it.
It might be better than the first one. I really have to debate it. But the reviews that we looked at online, they were low of the movie.
Yeah. We'll probably go more in depth about comparisons if we ever do talk about the fourth movie someday.
Which we might do in the form of a marathon, considering there's several movies that we can review and look at.
Yeah. And Jack is probably the most complicated character in this movie just because there's so much we could say about him.
Jack, so the whole thing with Jack is he comes in on this boat and you hear this epic music that is real iconic, nostalgic. I listen to this music in my car, and he's coming in on a boat that is sinking. The swagger this man has. He's coming in on a sinking boat. He's like he's on top of the world, and he's on a boat that he can't even use anymore. And this is our introduction to the character. And he just goes around. He's hard to catch. He evades the army for a bit, and he gets captured. Then Will helps him bust out. He goes around a lot, and he's skilled in many things. Even though they tested that boat thing, it's impossible. He's a very...
Are you talking about him floating into the river slowly?
With the boat? I think they said it would take a ton of some weight holding that boat down to be able to actually do that. But anyway, not Will. Jack is an all-round great character who plays many parts in this movie.
The only bad thing about Jack is that he's so good, he makes the other characters look worse in comparison. Case in point, Will. Will is not a bad character. I like Will, but his whole personality in this first movie, at least, is I gotta find Elizabeth. Is Elizabeth okay? And when you place him next to Jack, who's just got so many things going on as a character, Will is so uninteresting. Again, I like his character. Orlando Bloom does a great job. But I mean, compare him to Jack.
This man got one shot in his pistol. He saved for the guy who mutinied him years ago.
Jack, he's talking about Jack specifically.
And Will, you fell in love with a girl because she seen you after you got on a boat.
Yep.
That's the comparison we have here. So he has a score to settle. You're just the guy who has a love interest on the boat.
Yeah. Again, I think we both like Will.
Yeah, I like Will.
And Will has my favorite fight scene in the movie, which is the first sword fight between him and Jack. It's my personal favorite scene in the movie, the little sword fight they have with each other.
I think it's one of the longest sword fights that's ever happened in cinema.
Interesting.
The longest being the Star Wars Episode 3 between Obi-Wan and Anakin.
Well deserved. But that whole fight scene kind of brings my point at Jack is more interesting. Because Will has all these swords, and Jack says, "Who makes all these?" And Will's like, "I do, and I practice 3 hours a day." You know, very normal response. But then Jack's like, "You need to find yourself a girl, mate. Or perhaps you have found one, but have been unable to woo her yet." The personality and the charisma of this man.
This man, this is part of the reason I said there's character development in the fight scenes. He's learned so much about Will, and he's just been in a sword fight with him. Just met him.
And again, we can't stress enough. We like Will, but compared to Jack, he's so plain. And that kind of goes for the next character, Elizabeth.
Elizabeth is a girl from Port Royal. She's the daughter of the governor. They made her put on a corset. She falls into the ocean, and then this causes the medallion to call the Black Pearl, which is never really explained.
Somehow, yeah. Although it is a cool thing when Jack sees it and he's like, "Where did you get that?" Because I think Jack even recognizes it.
Elizabeth, what is her motivation? To protect Will after the pirates show up?
I guess. I mean, in the first movie, no, I'm sorry, this isn't the first movie. What I mean is, at the very beginning of the movie, you know, the little flashback scene?
Mm-hmm.
She notices that he's a pirate because of the medallion, and she takes it, becoming petty theft at 10. It's okay. But
does she
again,
want a life of adventure, I think?
I think that's what she wants, although...
Because she does get pampered a lot by her dad.
Yeah. And she ends up having to marry Norrington, who... I don't know if we'll talk about Norrington in this video. Norrington is not that interesting in this first movie.
He gets more interesting, I think. Peak interest in maybe the third?
In the next two movies, for sure.
But in this one, he is set to marry Elizabeth, who is about 10 years younger than him. Well, actually, maybe even more. And he tries to track her down. Honestly, his intentions aren't that much different from Will, but Will has a different way of going about it. And also not the British Army at his back. So that's one thing.
We didn't even say anything about Elizabeth. She's a cool character. Like, the only problem is This movie is around 2 hours long, and for about an hour and a half of those 2 hours, she's a damsel in distress. She does get like a cool fight scene near the beginning where she like fights the two intruders, and she helps Will fight the pirates at the end of the movie, but she's a damsel in distress for the rest of the movie.
She does try to help Will, I guess, while being a damsel in distress, because what can you do against immortal pirates? But what she did was, I know she couldn't really have predicted it, kind of dumb. Just because if you would have just let Will go instead of you, then the pirates wouldn't have been immortal. And then you could have just
Actually, if she hadn't even said she was Will, the pirates would have probably never even had to take her.
Would they have killed her, though? They might have. They killed a lot of people.
They might have, but she could have just said, "I'll throw you the medallion if you let me get off the boat." Yeah, I mean, Elizabeth's cool. This is one thing I will give the sequels. The sequels make the uninteresting characters way more interesting.
They go more into depth, but in my opinion, the sequels add too many characters. Sometimes that is a problem with movies and shows. They'll add so many good characters, but they don't get enough screen time because you've added too many to actually focus on them.
Yeah.
But that's more of a sequel problem. This first one doesn't have that problem.
Exactly. It gives the appropriate amount of screen time to everyone, including the main villain of the movie, Barbossa, the captain of the Black Pearl.
Barbossa is the most pirate of the movie, if you ask me.
Like, he's just a straight up bad guy.
And yeah, he just wants the medallion so that he could be free, I guess.
He can be human again.
He could feel. Also, think about the pirates. When exposed to moonlight, they're exposed to their true form. And you could just see that they're a skeleton. Which makes you wonder, if you took the gold Cortez, could you fight Davy Jones?
Probably. I mean, both you and him would technically be immortal.
He just forces you to bleed on the gold.
He probably would if you think about it.
I mean, I'm getting into some fanfic writing stuff. Alright, take us back to the topic and.
Okay, but Barbossa, again, this is another character that is far more interesting in the sequels after this because he's kind of more of an anti-hero in the later movies. But here he's just a straight up bad guy. I will say though, Jeffrey Rush, who plays Barbossa, plays him excellently.
You asked me, Jeffrey Rush was made to play a pirate. Because he just pulls it off really well. All he's missing really is a peg leg. He's got a monkey. How many people have a monkey?
He gets the peg leg in movie 4. I was about to say, he gets the peg leg in movie 4.
Foreshadowing. Podcast foreshadowing.
Absolutely. But again, this is the problem with this movie. Jack is the only character that we can substantially talk about. Because Barbossa, he's just a cool villain. That's all I have to say about him.
He runs the crew, he runs the show, he's the one who arranged the thing against Jack and the one that he has a vendetta with Jack, kinda. Well, he thinks Jack's dead. Until they actually see him, and then he's like, wait, you're alive? Which is surprising, because two people seen Jack.
He does that twice. He does that twice.
How insulting can you get? You leave a man to die on the island twice.
I don't think we even mentioned that, but the reason Jack wants the pearl back is because he used to be the captain. But Barbossa and the other people went and had a mutiny against him.
Which makes you wonder, what the heck did Jack do to get everyone on his ship to go against him?
I mean, it's Jack.
Fair enough.
If you've seen the movie, you know Jack is not exactly the hardest person to hate sometimes.
Yeah, I can see that.
Character-wise, we love him,
So
but in universe,
Jack wants revenge. Will wants Elizabeth. Elizabeth wants to keep Will and wants a life of adventure, and Barbossa wants to get the blood medallion in the box so that he can be free and his crew can be free.
yeah,
Does
that's
that
about it when it comes to characters.
you want to go through an honorable mentions?
I mean, we already mentioned Norrington, who's like the British general. There's Elizabeth's father, who's like the governor. He's kind of the comic relief character, but he's not that interesting. Like, I have nothing to say about him.
Or comical? He fights an arm.
Yeah, while everyone else is fighting like an epic battle, he's fighting a disembodied arm that is alive because of the curse.
Yeah, people are dying outside your ship. You're probably going to die, and you're fighting an arm.
Yeah. There's those two British dudes.
What were their names again? They're important in the later movies, I think. Because they also become pirates.
Yeah, I don't remember their names. There's also the two kind of comic pirates that are on the Pearl. You know, the one dude that loses an eye all the time.
What is their names? I can't remember these people's names. This is why they're in the honorable mentions. Their names might be said just a handful of times.
I don't know. If we ever do a marathon for these movies, maybe we'll remember their names.
And there's also Gibbs.
Yeah, Gibbs is cool. I like him.
Gibbs is sort of the person who gets a crew for Jack.
Yeah, he's like his first mate.
And he's found sleeping with pigs.
What a way to go.
Yeah, he's kind of Jack's best friend. After Barbossa. Barbossa sort of becomes Jack's friend later on. Which, granted, Barbossa used to be Jack's first mate, so that doesn't surprise me.
Jack has like a complicated relationship with every character, friendship or otherwise.
Yeah, in the 5th movie, Will straight up tells his son not to find Jack Sparrow.
Yeah. And actually, let's just quickly talk about the legacy and the sequels of this movie. Because the first movie has a legacy aside from the like people always say like, well, the franchise may not be so great as a whole. The first movie is still amazing.
The first movie holds up. I remember as a kid, I would watch this movie several times back when I actually could do that with movies. And it was enjoyable every time.
Yep, this is a movie that you can probably watch it as many times as you want and you can never get old of it. And it has one of the most legendary YouTube videos in history. Why is the rum gone?
Dude, that is such an iconic... There's so many iconic lines that come out of Pirates of the Caribbean. You can look up Why is the Rum Gone? Jack quotes.
Yeah, I personally prefer I Got a Jar of Dirt from the second movie and the video that goes with it. But Why is the Rum Gone is such a classic.
And it started right from this movie. So Elizabeth and Jack are on an island, and unbeknownst to Jack, Elizabeth is not getting drunk with him on this island, so he just passes out. And Elizabeth burns the rum.
To, like, signal a passing ship.
Which is not a bad plan, but Jack is not on board with this. He's like, why is the rum gone?
And someone took a... If you don't know the video we're talking about, it's just a remix song from using scenes from the movie. It's incredible.
It's a masterpiece of film work, like the movie itself.
Yeah. Yeah. We can't say that about the sequels, though. Let's quickly just do a rundown of the sequels. Starting with Dead Man's Chest. I don't care for this movie. I like what it does with the characters, But this movie just kind of drags, in my opinion. Dead Man's Chest does.
In my opinion, it's the second worst one. Should we do a number rating of the from 1 to 5? I mean, of the movies, not a 1 to 5 rating. On a scale of 1 to 10.
Give a quick for each one.
Yeah.
Okay. For the first one, I'll give it an 8.5.
I give it a 10.
Really?
Very few things I will give 10 to. But I think this one has iconicness and enjoyableness. It has a simplistic plot that is interesting. I give it 10.
There you go, everybody. Peyton's usually more critical than I am, but he gave this movie a 10.
I will
second movie?
It wasn't terrible.
No.
6?
I
think it
I'll
better.
give it
I think it did better than average. I don't think there's a movie other than the 5th one that did worse than average.
Yeah. I think I'll give it a 6 too. And then the third movie.
I'll 7.5. I don't know if I could give it an 8. It has really good fight scenes and probably the best fight scenes in the franchise, especially when they're fighting in the Maelstrom. If I said that right.
Mm-hmm. I don't hate the third movie, but I think it gets very complicated to the point where you've gotta really keep up with all the characters and plot lines and double crossing that's going on in the third movie. Like, it's shockingly complicated.
The second you get to the second movie, it gets complicated because you got people, they are searching for a heart. They had to find a witch lady who somehow brought Barbossa back from the dead. Same witch lady in the third movie gets turned into a giant and then turns into crabs.
And it's revealed that she's actually a sea goddess.
Who knew?
Yeah. I think I'll give it a 7. Yeah, I'll stick with the 7. I don't think it's nearly as good as the first movie, but it's fine.
Yeah, neither do I.
Okay, here comes our probably most controversial take in this whole video. On Stranger Tides. I gave the first movie an 8.5. I'm giving this one an 8.
I would like to give... I might give another 10. I really enjoyed this movie.
Wait, what did you say? You cut out on my end. Say that again?
I might just give this another 10.
Oh my gosh!
I might.
I love this. I really like this movie. I think there's a really cool mermaid scene. Blackbeard is in it, and I think he's probably the best villain in the franchise, if I were to give my personal take. Barbossa is better than he's ever been in this movie.
And he's got a bone to pick with Blackbeard?
He's got a peg leg like a real pirate. I mean, I love this movie. Does it have its problems? Yes. But I still really like this movie.
Yeah, Blackbeard, it really brings interest because from outside audiences, because everyone's heard of Blackbeard. And in this movie, they just encase him as this absolute piece of trash who would literally kill his own daughter. Who might be his own daughter? Question mark.
I just gotta tell you something real quick. You cut out at my end when you said Blackbeard's a piece of... And I thought you said something else entirely.
Thank goodness that OBS does not cut out.
Yes,
as
we're
much as
recording.
Zoom does.
And then we get to probably another controversial take. Our least favorite movie in the franchise.
Easily.
Dead Men Tell No Tales. Honestly, I give this one a 4. I do not like this movie.
I might give it a 3.
Jack is easily the dumbest he's ever been in the movie. He's got so many things going on in the first movie character-wise. He has nothing going on in this movie. He's just an idiot. And Jack always gets at least one fight scene in each of the movies to kind of show that, he's a capable fighter. He doesn't really get any of that in this movie.
And
He's just an idiot.
they added in a Will and Elizabeth replacement, who honestly, don't give me a Will and Elizabeth replacement. You ask me, the second the third movie's over, you don't need them anymore. They've played out their role. They've done their adventure, and there's nothing really more to follow through in their story. But instead, they bring back their son and Barbossa's daughter for some reason.
Which Barbossa went from being the most interesting he's ever been in the fourth movie to the least interesting he's ever been in the fifth movie.
Honestly, the entire plot driver is that this one guy wants to get revenge against Jack. And somehow the curse was lifted because he gave up his compass?
I don't remember. I haven't seen this one since I watched it in theaters. I don't like this movie. I understand that part, and the main reason is Jack Sparrow. I think Johnny Depp had some personal issues going on during the production of this movie. I think it's become...
Don't need to really discuss the reason why he might have had personal issues, but...
Yes, but if there was I think there was a rumor, or it might have been confirmed, that he had his lines fed to him through an earpiece through the fifth movie. But...
Which, from what I gather, he goes a lot sort of improv whenever he does some of these scenes.
Yeah.
And that adds
but
a
overall,
bit to him.
Yeah. The villain is also probably the most least interesting villain in the franchise.
Yeah,
I do not like this movie.
He is kind of basic.
Yeah. If you wanted a Will and Elizabeth replacement, just get Will and Elizabeth back. The franchise would have been much better. And they do come back in this movie. But
says
Will...
a few lines. Elizabeth, I maybe says something in the after credit scene.
I actually do like Will's scene. It's probably the only good part of the fifth movie. You know, the opening scene with Will.
And it does open up for a good sixth movie that'll probably sadly never happen.
Rip the dream.
Because they break the curse and it clearly shows Davy Jones at the end scene in the fifth one.
Yeah, we'll explain the Davy Jones curse at a later date. But that's our thoughts on the franchise as a whole. In conclusion, the first movie is, I think, the best one.
2 10 out of 10s. It's hard for me to. It really is hard for me to choose. I really do love both the first and the fourth one.
Well, that's our thoughts on Pirates of the Caribbean: Curse of the Black Pearl. Overall, a really, really fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it at this point, what are you doing?
Yeah, go watch it. What are you watching a review of it for? A podcast of it for? Go watch it yourself.
Yep. And that's all we have to say for it. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here, or update-ish things. This episode was much shorter for two reasons. One, if you watched our update, me and Peyton are working on a very big project in the background, and we're not going to say what it is yet, but we're working on a big project, so we're trying to do smaller main episodes. And also, the other reason is Peyton literally has to get off in 4 minutes.
Yeah, I'll be fine. I can drive to a place. It'd be fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, and there's the plot to this one. Honestly, it's not advanced, and there's not a whole lot of characters that we have to go into.
The most complicated plot, or the most discussion-heavy plot, is just Jack Sparrow himself.
This kind of reminds me of our Nacho Libre episode. There's not a whole lot of characters, and the plot is easy to talk about.
Yeah. But expect a lot more live-action stuff in the future, and probably some shorter episodes in the future. Until probably next year, when our big project will finally be revealed.
Just know that it's a big series.
Yeah, that's all we're going to say about it. We're not going to say the specifics of it yet.
Not yet, no.
But I think that's about all we have to say about this. Again, great movie. Peyton, any final thoughts?
I think that I want rum now.
You cut out on my end. I couldn't hear you.
I think I want rum now.
You're 21, right?
22.
Oh, yeah, baby. All right. We'll see you all next time for whatever the next episode is.
We gotta figure out why the rum's gone, alright? This is gonna be a series of our own. We gotta figure out where it's gone.
Absolutely. Until we do figure it out, we'll see you all next time.
Adios.